in New York. I'm Sue Goodwin.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nick, and you are tuned to member-supported WPFW Washington.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone in WPFW land. Greetings. I am Jackie Lukeman, and I am your host for another episode of Darker Than Blue here on WPFW 89.3. We are the station WPFW that is trying to change the world one broadcast at a time, here with Darker Than Blue, your source for struggle, socialism, and soul. Again, I'm Jackie Lukeman, and I am really, really excited to be coming to you at almost the end of this fantastic fall pledge drive, where we have been talking about how WPFW has been in the community for 47 years. We're saying that the circle is unbroken. We have to make sure that the circle remains unbroken of this 47 years of continuity of WPFW being in the community. And it's really fitting that this pledge drive is happening in fall, because fall is a time of change, of impermanence. Fall reminds us that as the seasons change, we might change too, but there are things in life that we do need to remain constant, and that is the unwavering commitment that WPFW has to providing you, dear listeners, with reliable news, informative public affairs, and exceptional music. The music on WPFW is really, really fantastic. It covers the gamut of your tastes, your preferences, and even different cultural expressions. So you don't only get fantastic entertainment from wonderful artists and amazing talent, but you also get little insights into different cultures. And WPFW has been doing this, providing this to the community for 47 years. And we invite you, dear listeners, to be in community and in solidarity with us at the end of this pledge drive. We've got a few more days to go by making a donation at WPFW fm.org. That's on the web, to ensure this independent grassroots media outlet not only survives, but thrives. And you can also pledge by calling 202-588-9739 or 1-800-222-9739. Or do you know what? You can hit us up on Cash App. Pledge on Cash App at $WPFWFM and pledge for Darker Than Blue. I would definitely appreciate it, because you are going to help us meet our $500 allocation of this goal. You have gotten us close to the goal. You have gotten us over the goal. And I know you can help us do it again, because this is not my show, ladies and gentlemen. This is your show. So I need you to exercise your ownership in this show by calling 202-588-9739 or 1-800-222-9739 and pledge your support for Darker Than Blue, for WPFW FM, and for 48 years of continuity in the community. Thank you so much for the support that I know is coming, because I know you all are dialing, you are going to the web, you are going to your Cash App, and I expect to see some movement soon, because you all have been fantastic. And I doubt that just because it's another Friday, you're not fantastic today. So you know what? Some interesting things happened in the news this past week that I think are worth talking about. Actually, this is a little bit older than last week, but it's okay, because it didn't receive a whole lot of attention, and I think it deserves a lot of attention. Did we hear about Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris was heckled while speaking at a prominent historically Black church in the battleground state of Pennsylvania? Now, this is being reported. I am reading this report from the Christian Post. Believe it or not, yes, it's a religious, a Christian publication, but they report that Harris was indeed heckled Sunday. This past Sunday, this did happen, where she spoke before a mostly supportive crowd at the Church of Christian Compassion of Philadelphia. And she was talking about the words of St. Paul of Tarsus, where she says, the Apostle Paul wrote about the power we possess, the power of the people. He wrote that God is able to do more than we ask or think according to his power that is at work within us. And that is actually what Ephesians 3:20 does say. She goes on to say, according to the Christian Post, and Paul speaks of this power from experience. In his life, he faced every kind of test and trial imaginable, shipwreck, persecution, prison, and in every instance, he saw divine intervention. I think I need to stop there because I had a fantastic conversation one time with my friend, mentor, and pastor and fellow WPFW show host, Reverend Graylan Hagler, about the intervention of Paul when Paul was in prison and how it is described in the Bible as this like supernatural thing, like God supernaturally opened the doors of the prison. And Reverend Hagler, in his indomitable way of telling a fantastic story through his own amazing life experiences, Hagler said that, that's not what that scripture says, that God, through the Holy Spirit, just magically opened the doors of the prison. No, what God did was through Paul and the singing of the other prisoners who were in prison, because if you read those scriptures, the scriptures do describe Paul and the fellow prisoners singing in prison. They were singing to God all the time. And Paul was talking to the jailers. He was, asking them about, I guess, their families. We don't know what he said, but we do know that there was interaction between the imprisoned and the prison guards. What does that mean? Why is that important? Because what happened in this instance of Paul and others who were followers of Jesus, not yet called Christians, that came centuries and centuries later, but Paul and the other followers of Jesus were in prison. They were singing, they were talking to the jailers, and it was the jailers who realized this might be where the divine intervention happened, Reverend Hagler points out, in God working on the hearts of the jailers through the singing and the stories and the interaction that they had with the imprisoned. And I would imagine, this is just a guess because this is not in the record, in the Bible about this particular encounter, but I would imagine, I think that Paul had to have told the jailers, now look, I'm a Roman citizen. I'm not even supposed to be in here. Like, y'all are not even supposed to be putting Roman citizens in jail. So that right there is wrong. And then you've got a Roman citizen in jail for following a religious leader who is just doing religious things and encouraging the people. So that's number two that you got a problem with, right? So Paul I think he is making the case for releasing the imprisoned based on not just his belief in Jesus and who Jesus is, who he believes Jesus to be, but also through using his influence, using his privilege, using his privilege as a Roman citizen to talk to the jailers and say, yo, y'all are, this ain't what we do, right? This is not how we handle Roman citizens. And these people are my friends. They're my comrades. They shouldn't be in here either. And of course, none of that is in the biblical account, which is why, as much as I do love the parts of the Bible that are the words in the example of Jesus. This is why the Bible is not an historical account of anything. It's a book of allegories. It's a book of wonderful stories. It's a book of morality lessons on how we Christians are supposed to treat other people. That really is all it is. It is not a guide for life for everybody. It is a guide for how Christians are supposed to conduct ourselves in the world with other people. So in this account, where Harris is talking about divine intervention, that's really not what it was. It wasn't the divine intervention of God stepping in and miraculously freeing no. The divine intervention is that we, the believers, are supposed to exercise our faith in whatever situation we are in. And in doing that, we are the hands and feet of what we believe, who we believe in, and that is how we influence those forces to act on our behalf. But remember, again, this is an allegory. It is not an actual historical, it's just not. But I find it interesting that Harris talks about this instance of Paul being in prison and receiving divine intervention and having no insight into what that scripture really means. Because in every instance when Paul was in these terrible situations, he didn't just sit there and say, "Oh, God, look at me. I'm in such a terrible situation. Please rescue me." And then God, sends some angels or doves down. And no, Paul had to do some things. Paul had to talk to some people. Paul had to get up and open his mouth and move his feet and use his hands to engage with the people around him, because in every instance, other people were around him. So the entire point of these kinds of stories in the Bible for us is that we are supposed to always be engaging with the people around us in constructive ways, I know this is a weird thing, in godly ways, in loving ways. That's what that means, godly, in loving, compassionate, respectful, welcoming ways, in order to try to influence the powers that be. But that is not the only way we influence the powers that be, because the Bible does record several instances of people's resistance to oppression, which is why there are so many Bible verses about how God hates oppression, how God hates the oppression of the poor, how God hates the oppression of the widowed, how God hates the oppression of the orphans, how God will curse nations that oppress the poor. Remember Jeremiah, right? And the controversy surrounding what he said. He quoted accurately the scripture in which God says in the Bible, "I will judge and condemn nations and leaders that oppress the poor." It's in the book. And then we remember Jeremiah, right, went on to say, "God, the United States of America." That is biblical. It is in the book. Is USA mentioned? No. But is the USA not a nation? Yes, it is. And does the United States of America as a nation, as a government, as a part of policy, oppress the poor? Absolutely. So Reverend Wright accurately and rightly divided that scripture. Accurately and rightly divided Genesis 15, 13, 12, 13. Yeah, I think that's, yeah. Thank you, Brother Jamil. And thank you, everybody on Black Liberation Media on YouTube who's watching. Good to see you. Y'all stick around. Got some extra for you today. But yes, Reverend Jeremiah Wright accurately interpreted Genesis 15, 13, because God does say that. It's in the book that he hates the nations and leaders who oppress the poor. And he said, "I will judge and condemn nations and leaders who oppress the poor. I hate it so much. But do we ever hear that when these religious leaders, particularly Black religious leaders, do we ever hear that when they talk about the religious connection of politicians? No, we don't. We didn't hear anything about it, of course, when Trump was being surrounded by I can't even call them all white evangelicals because they weren't all white. There were way too doggone many Black evangelical, right-wing, conservative evangelical so-called leaders in that group of folks who were extending hands to pray for Trump. None of them talked about the responsibility of us believers to do what the Bible tells us to do, which is to speak up on behalf of the oppressed and the silenced, to not be silent in the face of oppression against the widows and the orphaned and the poor, to fight for justice on behalf of the oppressed. Those are literal scriptures in the Bible. And there are so many more. The Bible tells us to seek justice, chase after it, find it. Where is it? You don't know? You better go look for it. You have to find it. You have to chase it down. If justice is running from you, you better run after it. Seek. That is an active word. It's not pray for justice. Pray for justice. No, it's not even sing for justice, even though sometimes a good hymn is good for the soul, especially when you're in trouble, when you're going through some stuff. But the scriptures do not tell us believers to pray for justice. Doesn't tell us to sing for justice. Doesn't even tell us to march for justice. It tells us to fight for justice on behalf of the oppressed. It tells us to seek justice, love mercy, love it, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. That's what the scriptures tell us to do. And have we seen these politicians who have used the Christian faith to prop themselves up and guilt and spiritually guilt believers, Christians, into voting for their hateful, anti-human, anti-Christian, anti-democratic policies? No. Of course, we didn't hear anything about how God hates the oppression of the poor from the Republicans because, well, the Republicans hate the poor and they like repressing the poor. And they don't really care what's in the Bible because they don't really read it. They just like the authoritarian part. They like the part where they believe the Bible says that God will bless America particularly, even though that's not in the book. It's nowhere in the book. There is no nation that is above all nations in the book. And I seriously doubt the validity, the veracity, the correctness of the narrative of a chosen people in the Bible. That flies against who God is, who is supposed to be no respecter of persons. There's not supposed to be Jew nor Greek nor slave nor free nor male nor female in Christ Jesus. We're just one in Christ Jesus. So how is that? How does a chosen people exist in such a context where the same deity is no respecter of persons? Come now, let us reason together is what it says in the book. And what is happening is the reason people believe some of this foolishness is because we are not coming together in our Bible studies and in our Sunday worship and in our Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday worship. We're not coming together to reason together. We're coming together to be indoctrinated by white supremacist interpretations of what's in the book. And some of the stuff that's in the book is a white supremacist, imperialist, either interpretation or mistranslation of the original text. I hope you see what I'm getting at. I hope you see where I'm going. Okay, so let me make it clear. So Kamala Harris is talking about the moment that we're in. She says she talked about justice for all God's children, describing the election, and this is the Christian Post quoting what she's saying, describing the election as, quote, a moment that will define the very character of our nation, end quote, and how the United States faces real challenges. A commotion could be heard among the congregation, and the commotion was that she was heckled about genocide. And unlike what she did the first time in her first public speech after she was coronated as the Democratic nominee, unlike the first time she spoke publicly and she was heckled and she told those people who were speaking out on behalf of the oppressed, speaking out to end the genocide against Palestinians, to end the barrage against Gaza and the West Bank and Rafah, because the Lebanon assault had not yet started then, but her first speaking engagement, I believe it was in New York, and she was heckled by anti-genocide protesters. She shut those people up and said, if you want Donald Trump to win, just say so, but I'm speaking now. Can you imagine? The same person who silenced people who were standing up, speaking out definitively on behalf of people who are being subjected to a genocide, that same person who told those people to shut up, because obviously you must want Trump to win if you are heckling me. not because she's helping to facilitate the genocide, but because they must want Trump to win. Imagine that person now being welcomed into a house of worship, a house of Christian faith, and saying that, oh, we want justice for all God's children. Are the people in Palestine not God's children? Is that what we're saying? Because you cannot possibly be facilitating a genocide, sending the weapons to bomb the people in Gaza, Rafah, the West Bank, and now Jabaila and Beirut in Iran, in other parts of Lebanon. You can't, or Beirut, and other parts of Iran. You cannot possibly be doing that, actively doing that, and saying, I will never stop giving Israel the support it needs to defend itself. How does one engage in that behavior and say that statement while also saying you are interested in justice for all God's children? The two cannot coexist together. They do not coexist together. The two are literally dark and light trying to exist together, and they don't. But she was correct when she said that this is a moment that will define the very character of our nation. And the character of our nation, I think, has already been well defined. The character of our nation and other people around the world know very well what the character of the United States is. The United States is an imperialist hegemon. The United States is a settler colonial, white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist, homophobic, misogynistic, sexist, anti-immigrant, warmongering hegemon. All of that means disaster and death for the rest of the world. All right? So what does it mean when people of faith, and this is something I think I've been thinking about for a couple of days now, what does it mean when people of faith, particularly Black Christians, co-sign genocide? I want to go back to something that happened a little bit earlier than her event at the Church of Christian Compassion in Philadelphia, which I'm good for the protester, and shame on the church for escorting them out. And Harris did say, after she was heckled, as the person was being, first the organist started playing to drown the heckler out. Some Christian compassion in that church, huh? And then Harris herself said, see, this is why we fight for all voices in our democracy. This is why we fight for all voices. But she hasn't been fighting for all voices because that voice was escorted out of the church. She didn't say, let this person speak. This is the face of democracy. When we have dissent, we give dissent as much of an audience, we give dissent as much time at the mic as the status quo, because that is democracy, when every voice is given an equal opportunity to be heard. But she's talking about this is why we stand up for all voices as the person is literally being dragged out of the church. So there are some contradictions there that people of faith, we Christians, really have to contend with, that we're truly not doing a good job of. And I need to go back to this service that Reverend Pastor Jamal Bryant of the New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Stonecrest, Georgia, had on October 21st for Kamala Harris. And again, this is reported in the Christian Post. So they say that Harris, who celebrated her 60th birthday on the day of the service, was sitting not far from Brian in the pulpit, who was preaching from Esther 4:14. Oh my gosh. And he pushed the conspiracy theory that the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 is a plot to destroy minority communities. He said, and this is according to the Christian Post, quote, in the words of Marvin Gaye, you can't throw up both your hands. We've got to do something now, ladies and gentlemen. In ancient scripture, we find an occasion where they were plotting to destroy all the minorities because they wouldn't break. Now, he is talking about the story of Esther in the book of Esther in the Bible. Then he says, quote, they came up with a strategy on how it is they could destroy minorities. And they crafted an agenda called, he called it 0025. A very bad alliteration to Project 2025, but okay. And in Project 0025, Pastor Jamal Bryant says, here's what it is that we find in scriptures, that they wanted to fire every person who did not agree with dictatorship. Now here, Pastor Jamal Bryant is comparing some aspects of Project 2025 to scriptural doctrine, but that's not the problem here. It's really not, because he's trying to compare the abuses that people are afraid of in Project 2025 to what was being faced in Esther, in the book of Esther. In a quick nutshell, the Persian king Xerxes had a second in command, or the hand, his hand, for you Game of Thrones fans and House of the Dragon fans, of which I am. His hand, Haman, said, you know what, these people, they keep reproducing, they're all over the place, their little traditions and their faith or whatever, it keeps them separated from other people. They don't want to integrate with anybody, and they really are not going to obey the king because of their traditions and beliefs. They're going to become a problem because they're not going to stop procreating, so we need to get rid of them. King Xerxes said, okay, he agreed. He was like, you know what? Yeah, okay, fine. Problem was, King Xerxes was married to Esther. She was a young Jewish woman who he selected as his concubine. Esther was taken from her mentor, Mordecai. Both were Jews. Esther becomes queen of Persia. Unlike much of the Hebrew Israelite contingent, they did not leave the region of Sus, I believe they were in. They stayed in Persia. So Esther stayed in Persia, and she learns of this plot because Mordecai learns of it. The Jewish nation in Persia is in mourning because of this plot. They were given a decree where they were told, look, y'all got 10 days and then we are coming to get you. So they're in mourning, they're outraged, they're terrified. Mordecai comes to the castle, warns Esther, tells her, you got to do something. Esther is like, what am I supposed to do? I'm just a girl, blah, blah, blah. And Mordecai tells her, if you do not speak up in this moment. Deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. So let's be clear about what the book of Esther really says that Pastor Jamal Bryant did not make clear. It's not that Esther was born to save the Jewish people, which is what everybody gets wrong about the story of Esther. It wasn't that she was born to save the Jews. It was that she was chosen to be the consort of King Xerxes, and she was elevated to queen because Xerxes loved her so much. She was made queen in order so that she could save the Jews, right? And it wasn't that the Jews would not be saved from Haman's plot. It was that it was supposed to be Esther who was involved in it. But Mordecai made it clear to her that if you don't speak up, and remember, all Esther did, for those of you who don't know, what Esther did was risk her life going into the king and his chambers unannounced. And if you did that, according to, historical record back in the day, the king could kill you if he felt like it. Because if you didn't make an appointment with the king, he was like, you shouldn't be here. And I shouldn't be wasting my time. You shouldn't be wasting my time. You're wasting my time. You should die. So even though she was the queen, even though she was his beloved, because she went into that chamber without his previous permission, she could have been killed by him. And she went into the chamber and said, look, I know you could kill me, but please hear me out, because you're about to kill my people. And I can't believe you would do such a thing. Would you do such a thing to my people? That's what she did. But Mordecai made it clear to her that if you don't speak up, salvation for the Jews will come from somebody else, but you'll die. You and your family will die. So the other lesson in this story of Esther is exactly what Jesus told us later on in the Bible. Speak up on behalf of the oppressed. Period. That's the lesson. But people have turned this story into, oh, these particular women have been born for such a time as this, because King Xerxes at some point after Esther pleads with him not to carry out this plan to kill the Jews in Persia, Xerxes says to Esther, could it be that you were made queen for such a time as this? Right? So let's be clear about what's actually in the book, as opposed to what people like to use to manipulate people from the book. But we'll get back into that in a minute, because hey, we are still in pledge drive. And I was just about to say, y'all have not shown up, but you know what? Wendell from Washington, D.C., thank you for proving me wrong. But I think I have a comrade, a friend, an ally, and an assist to help us get through the rest of this $400. And where are you? Are you there? Oh, do I have my pledge partner? I don't hear them yet. So let's get to a promo. I am sure we have one queued up right now. So let's talk about tomorrow is the Black is Back Coalition's 16th annual Black People's March on the White House. This is an annual event that has been organized by the Black is Back Coalition, which is an offshoot of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. This is the 16th year that it has gone on, and the 16th annual Black People's March on the White House will take place at Malcolm X Park tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is open to the public. There will be a rally beginning at 11 a.m. at Malcolm X Park. The rally will be followed by a march from Malcolm X Park to the White House, where there will be a closing rally. And there will also be a conference on Sunday in order to close out the event. And you can find more information on this event at the website. Oh, if I can pull it up very quickly, at the Black is Back Coalition website at blackisbackcoalition.org. That is blackisbackcoalition.org. All right, let me check in with our producer extraordinaire to see if our pitch partner is available. Do we have Sataria yet?
She has a Zoom link. I'm waiting. I think she's gonna be on shortly.
Okay, sweet. Well, let's get back into talking about Esther and the foolishness that politicians do with co-opting this very, very important Bible story, particularly in this political moment. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that Pastor Jamal Bryant was saying in trying to compare Kamala Harris to Biblical Esther, and why some of these things are really silly, ahistorical, and politically foolish. And how I hope this will convey a little bit better how religion, particularly the Christian faith, is used to indoctrinate people to accept lesser evilism, when as a concept of faith, lesser evilism is not a valid concept at all. And it is not something that people of faith should ever accept. So we were talking about his claims about Project 0025, and that's the original plan, the plan in the Bible, the plan in the book of Esther that Haman cooked up to kill the Jews. Then he says, Pastor Jamal Bryant, and again, this is being reported by the Christian Post, he says that we find in scriptures that they wanted to fire every person who did not agree with dictatorship. Now he's making an alliteration to the plan or the intention that Project 2025 lays out to fire hundreds of thousands of federal government employees. Does anybody know how hard it is to get a job in the government as it is today? Like it is very difficult to get a job in the federal government. And there is no, I don't think there's a civil service exam anymore, but they make sure they weed out as many people as they can by making the application process as onerous as possible, because those KSAs are doggone near impossible to answer correctly in a way that gets your resume looked at. So the idea that there is that there is just an enormous workforce that is going to be utterly destroyed if Trump gets away with firing people in the, oh, come on, it's most of the people who work in the federal government. Now, yes, there are a lot of people who are contractors. And this is what a lot of people don't know about the federal government and the civilian workforce in the federal government. The civilian workforce in the federal government is mostly contractors. They're actually not federal employees. Most of them are contractors, which is why whenever there's a government shutdown, they always talk about how the federal employees will get back pay after the shutdown is resolved through the budget. But they always say that contractors will not get any back pay. That's because most of the low-wage workers of the federal government, the non-supervisory employees, they're contractors. They're not federal government employees. Not all, but a lot. Right? Which means they already don't get benefits. So here's the interesting thing, because they're contractors and not direct federal employees, they actually can't be fired under any kind of federal decree because they're under a separate employment contract with the federal government through the federal government, but they're not employed by the federal. So you see, that is almost like an empty threat. The whole Project 2025, they're going to fire all the federal government employees. No, they're not. They're not. Because trust me when I tell you, they're not firing any supervisors. They're not. They are not firing any GS-13s and above. And they're not going to do it. So that stuff is an empty threat. It is not. It's a threat that they actually can't carry through in the way that they're trying to make you believe they can. So there's that. But then he says they wanted to end the independence of the Department of Justice. So Project 2025 says, yeah, they want to get rid of the Department of Justice, which is also a lie because they don't actually want to get rid of the Department of Justice. They just don't want the Department of Justice to be used to investigate them. They're fine with the Department of Justice investigating and coming after us because that's exactly what the Department of Justice has always done. The Department of Justice is not an independent agency. It is an institution that is a part of the federal government. They are the law enforcement arm of the federal government. How are they independent? And the DOJ has been carrying out the violent repression of people who exercise or express dissent against the federal government since before COINTELPRO. Let's talk about the Palmer raids. You're going to have to look this stuff up. The Palmer raids, COINTELPRO, the House Un-American Acts Committee, the McCarthy era, sanctioning and closing foreign news outlets like Press TV from Iran, like Sputnik Radio, like RT, deplatforming independent journalists, like completely taking YouTube channels of independent journalists off of YouTube, kicking African Stream off of social media. This is what the US government has done through the Department of Justice, through the FBI and the Department of Treasury. For good measure, let's just throw them right in there. Because it's through the Department of Treasury that they issue sanctions against individuals. And that is what the Department of Treasury did in the case with Sputnik Radio. Sanctioned the owners, which the contract wasn't actually through the Russian government. Yeah, you didn't know that because the US government lies all the time. So they literally sanctioned individuals, took their money so that they could not continue to operate Sputnik Radio. That's not an independent act. That is being done for the US government. Department of Justice, FBI, the Department of Treasury, they're not doing that because they have nothing better to do. They're doing that because that is what their bosses are telling them to do. I believe we can take a little pitch break now because I believe my pitch partner, Sataria, has arrived. Hey.
Hi, Jackie. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And I think I just got so enthralled with the show. And so thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful program, and I know that you do a great show. And those listeners out there, I know they love and appreciate the wonderful program you do. You know, you are a volunteer here at WPFW. I don't know if the listeners all recognize that. And I also recognize that it's not like you just come in and do the show by the seat of your pants. I know it takes a lot of planning and organizing and research beforehand. And we want to thank you. If you appreciate the work that is done on Darker Than Blue each and every week to bring you a quality program full of lots of information, we ask that you make a donation to show your appreciation. Give us a call at 1-800-222-9739 or go to our website at WPFWFM.org. You can cash app us at $WPFWFM. I want to thank Wendell in DC again, who made a generous donation. We ask you to join Wendell. We are looking for new members, a lot of new members this drive. We want to have 600 by the time the drive closes at midnight on Sunday. So if you haven't given to WPFW before, this is the perfect time to stand up, be counted, and show how important WPFW is to you. We ask that you join as a new supporter. You can become a sustainer for just $20 a month. That counts as $240 a year. That is small amounts that add up to a big difference at WPFW. So we invite you to become a sustainer as well. Every new donor we get, they strengthen the foundation of WPFW. They allow us to plan confidently for the future and bring even more conversations, news, points of view, and music. New donors make it possible for us to reach a wider audience and support more of the unique programs that you love here on WPFW. So again, we ask that you call, make your donation at 1-800-222-9739 or 202-588-9739. You can cash app us at WPFWFM or go to our website, click donate now at WPFWFM.org. However you choose to donate, we look forward to hearing from you, to thanking you, and for you joining the WPFW family or renewing your membership. 202-588-9739.
Thank you so much, Sataria, and thank you so much, all of you wonderful, dear listeners who will contribute. Those of you thinking about contributing, thank you for thinking about it. And here's to hoping that you stop thinking about it and go on and take the plunge and contribute to WPFW and to Darker Than Blue. I would appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you listening every Friday. So let's wrap this up because we've got just a few minutes left. And I really want to get to some of these points because we need to remember them as the days continue on here to the election. Pastor Jamal Bryant also said that Project 2025 seeks to dismantle the Department of Education. And I've heard people say that to me. And I want to remind people that during the Obama administration, the privatization of public education was actually a thing. We know that because one of his appointees was Arne Duncan. He was the head of the Department of Education under Obama. And why is that important? Because Arne Duncan was involved with basically the privatization of public schools in Chicago. Duncan and Obama proceeded to transform the Department of Education into a committee of school privatization. And this is from an article written in Black Agenda Report by Danny Haifong. The name of the article is The Obama Legacy, Part 3, Destroying Public Education as We Know It. He says in this article, Duncan was already well known in Chicago as an agent of privatization when he served as the CEO of Chicago schools prior to his appointment to head the Department of Education under Obama. In 2010, Duncan claimed that Hurricane Katrina was, quote, the best thing that happened to the education system in New Orleans, end quote. For Duncan, the fact that several thousand Black Americans from New Orleans were permanently displaced was a good thing for education because it allowed the Obama administration to institute the first completely privatized school district in the United States. So you all are afraid of Project 2025 dismantling education? Why were you not concerned about what was done to the Department of Education and to public schools in Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, and several other places around this country under the Obama administration? Betsy DeVos, she worked with these people. So people see Betsy DeVos today and they're like, oh, she's the one that the Republicans want to put at the head of the Department of Education to destroy it. She had been working under the Obama administration already. She had already been working with Rahm Emanuel and Arne Duncan in Chicago already. Barack Obama from Chicago, senator from Illinois, he knew these people. He knew what they did in Chicago, and he put them in his administration anyway. But you're afraid of Project 2025? And you don't know that the privatization of public schools through the Department of Education and its transformation was actually, I won't say it was started, but it sure was ramped up and solidified under Obama. But Project 2025, yeah. He says, again, Pastor Jamal Bryant says, Project 0025, they want to limit abortion. Do we have to remind you again that Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and pretty much the whole Democratic Party said that abortion was not a major issue? Nancy Pelosi said that there was not going to be a litmus test on abortion from candidates within the Democratic Party. She just said that in 2017. So all of this campaigning on abortion that Democrats are doing, that they're campaigning on the thing they said for almost a decade wasn't important enough for them to prioritize in order to codify Roe versus Wade so that what happened a few years ago wouldn't happen. Interesting. Then he says, Pastor Jamal Bryant says, that Project 0025, they want to reverse the FDA's approval of abortion pills and make the tax code more favorable to businesses. Under the Obama administration, the largest transfer of wealth from the working class and poor to the 1%, particularly of Black homeowners, who were impacted the worst by the housing bubble bursting. And hundreds of thousands of Black families lost the only asset they had, their home, under that massive corporate theft scheme. Obama's response actually didn't help Black people hold on to or recover any of that wealth lost. So who made out better under neoliberal policies? The people or the profiteers? Even under the Democrats, the profiteers always make out better, because who was prosecuted for the housing bubble? Who was prosecuted for the tech bubble? Who was prosecuted? Who has been prosecuted for the massive wage theft, the suppression of wages, the artificial hiking up of retail prices just because that's how they increase their profits? Who has paid for the theft of resources from the people by corporations under Republicans and Democrats? No one, because they're friends. The policies of both political parties serve to benefit the rich and businesses, not the people. Pastor Bryant goes on to say they wanted to dismantle Medicare and Medicaid and wanted to stop Social Security. And Democrats always say this about Republicans all the time. They want to take your Social Security away. They want to take Medicare. They want to cut Medicare. Well, I hate to tell you this. Actually, I don't hate to tell you this. I'm very happy to tell you this, because I want you to know this so you can stop believing that there's a whole lot of daylight between Republicans and Democrats. This article is from NPR from 2013, April. And the title of the article is Obama Riles His Own Party with Social Security Offer. President Obama's decision to include in the budget proposal he's scheduled to unveil is a less generous way to calculate Social Security cost of living increases that may be the clearest sign yet that his name will not again be on the presidential ballot. NPR says Obama made a proposal during a 2011 budget showdown to cut Social Security and Medicare. He proposed it. But that was during a face-off with Republicans over whether they'd even agree to raise the debt ceiling, and he didn't provide many details on the cuts. That pressure-packed moment, which ultimately led to a downgrade in the nation's credit rating, was the impetus for that offer of a grand bargain compromise. See, this is what we say. We anti-imperialists, this is what we mean when we say that when Democrats say bipartisanship, they mean throwing the people under the bus so that the Republicans can get what they want. That's what this is. Obama may not have the same pressure as then to offer up cuts to the nation's premier social safety net programs, but he has. They're saying he didn't even have to make this proposal because he wasn't running again. This was his second term. He wasn't going to run again. He didn't have to make this proposal, but he did it anyway. It's the kind of in-your-face move that had he proposed it during his first term, Obama might have demoralized and angered enough Democrats to have hurt his re-election chances. It might even have spurred a primary challenge. Now, safely in a second term, he won by promising a balanced approach, also a trick bag term, to deficit reduction of tax increases and spending cuts. Obama is providing more detail. So what he was proposing was to calculate Social Security benefit increases less generously, using less of the current changed CPI method, which means basically, in layman's terms, that the Social Security COLA increases would be smaller, because he wanted to change the calculation for the increases so that they would be smaller. So that would basically effect a cut to Social Security benefits. But he also wanted to cut Medicare benefits. Didn't provide a whole lot of details on that, but you know who did provide details on cutting Medicare benefits? Joseph Robinette Biden, who proposed eliminating Medicare Advantage as a cut to Medicare. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy with Medicare Advantage. It's a hit or miss kind of plan. It's very messy. It doesn't work very well for a lot of people, but for some people it does work pretty good. But rather than just providing universal health care for everybody, he wants to cut out a part of Medicare that does provide some, even if it is slapdash and not great, a bridge benefit for the coverage that Medicare itself does not provide. Joseph Biden proposed cuts to Medicare. So all of this fear-mongering about what the Republicans want to do with Project 2025, Democrats have done. Democrats have either already done it, Republicans have already done it, or Democrats want to do it. So this whole thing about Project 2025 and Kamala Harris being born like Esther for such a time as this is hogwash. Because first of all, Esther was not born or elevated to be queen to facilitate a genocide. She used her privilege and her power as queen to save people's lives. That is not happening here. And second, the fear-mongering and the disgusting disparaging of Black men who are choosing not to vote for genocide at all, because genocide is evil. There is no lesser evil in genocide. And how can the Republicans do a worse genocide? Do you see what I mean? What's worse than genocide? Nuclear holocaust, I think, is the only thing I can think of worse than genocide. But we have Democratic faith leaders now using faith traditions, faith stories, and falsely and making false claims about the evils that Republicans are going to do if you don't stop them and vote for Democrats, because they're not telling you that Democrats have done these things already or want to do these things and have always been in collusion with Republicans to do these things, and going further to disparage Black men who do not want to vote for genocidal, dishonest, undemocratic politicians of either political party. Black men who choose not to vote for genocide don't hate Black women, they hate genocide. And I think that's perfectly valid. Those are the kind of people I want to be around. Pastor Jamal Bryant and these Christians who are using our faith tradition and the Bible and these Bible stories, these stories about our morality as Christians, to tell us to vote for evil, that in itself is evil. So thank you all very much for joining me for another episode of Darker Than Blue. Thank you so much, Wendell, for your generous support for Darker Than Blue, for this show. For those of you who have not pledged, that's okay. You have more opportunities to pledge tonight. Stay tuned for News Views with Garland Nixon and so much more fantastic program that you have many opportunities to support as this fantastic Friday goes on. Thank you so much. Remember, call 202-588-9739 or 1-800-222-9739 to pledge to keep 47 years of continuous community engagement going. See you.
Hi, I'm Danny Glover, and you are tuned into WPFW Washington, your station for jazz and justice.
All right, folks. Woo! I had to get through that thing really fast because, man, I had a lot of notes. And I think, oh yeah, I need to end that. I need to end that meeting for all. There we go. All right, there we go. I had a lot of notes, a lot of notes, and I forget that I only have an hour. And that hour goes really, really fast, especially when everything doesn't go right, when your pitch partner is late, and then when you forgot to pull up the ad for the promo that you're supposed to read. Yeah, all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, man, I've been really pissed off about the way people have been using Christianity to shame people into voting for this fucking psycho, Kamala Harris. See, I can't say that on WPFW, but I can say it here. And the way she weaponizes her speech has been, it's been nasty. It's been nasty work. It's been nasty work. The way that woman flat out told those righteous protesters at her first speaking event, when they are talking about end the genocide, arms embargo now, Palestine will be free, free Palestine. Her response to free Palestine was, if you want Trump to win, keep on talking, but I'm speaking now. That was her response to people advocating on behalf of ending a genocide against human beings. That was her response. I am speaking now. The fucking privilege, the arrogance, just the condescension. But the thing that was more terrifying was all of the people cheering when she said it. I think that was the moment that I realized something's wrong with these people in this country. Something's wrong with our families and our friends and our coworkers and our neighbors and our fellow church members. Something's wrong with a lot of people in these churches, y'all. Something's wrong with a lot of these Black folks. And I mean something that is more wrong than the stuff that was wrong with them in the first place. Something's wrong with these people. Because I really have not been able to figure out how so many Black folks are cool with genocide all of a sudden. I'm not really confused. I'm appalled. I'm appalled. I'm truly appalled that the same people who talk about how God is no respecter of persons, how the same people have been telling that lie about a chosen people, at the same time they're telling people that God is no respecter of people and he loves everybody. You can't have both. You can't have a God that does both. You cannot have a God that loves everyone equally, but then has this little group of chosen people over here that's different from it. Get the hell out of here. That doesn't make any damn logical sense. Even in the context of much in the Bible not making any logical sense. But then when you look further, deeper into the Bible and you really read some of these scriptures and what some of these things are saying about groups of people, you see where it comes from. I understand actually where this dismissal of this genocide comes from. It does come from some biblical teaching. Because this story of Esther, interestingly enough, is also used as justification for hatred of Arabs. because King Xerxes was the king of the Persian people, Arabs. Okay. So the narrative among Christians is that, see, this is how Arabs are. They hate the Jews. The Arabs have been trying to kill the Jews ever since Queen Esther. People have said that to me. Because see, I've been fighting with Christians over Islam, over Islamophobia and black self-hatred and respectability politics and Palestine for years. And I have the same arguments with different people, and they all give the same dumb excuses. Do you see, if you read the Bible, you see how the Arabs have always hated the Jews. Who wrote it? Who wrote that? Where did that book come from? Who wrote it? When was it written? Under which regime was it written? Who was the ruler and the leader at the time this book was written? And see, with the book of Esther, nobody actually knows who wrote it. Nobody knows where it came from. That's kind of the sketchy part, right? So why use something in a book of faith that is intended to guide the people of faith in how they interact with other people? Why use these stories in this book that are meant just for us to dictate how everybody else is supposed to act? And to claim that it is history. That these stories in the Bible, which are allegory, which are object lessons, they're morality lessons, they're like Aesop's fables, but on steroids, kind of. You know what I mean? How are you talking about a book in which entire groups of people are characterized as being like wild asses, running around in the desert, being hairy and having their hand against everyone around them, being warlike and angry all the time? This is what is in the Bible about the descendants of Ishmael and Persians, Arabs. Is it any wonder that Christians of all stripes don't give a shit that a bunch of Arabs are being killed? So this has created this moment, I think, for people of faith in particular, where I do feel like my faith is being tested in a way that people of faith are not comfortable talking about, because I believe our faith is being tested right now. And really, we're a lot of us are failing. A lot of us are failing. Most of us are failing. Most of us, and I know folks don't believe in it, and that's fine. That's cool. You can believe what you want. But for me, I think that most of us are going to end up in the afterlife in a place that we did not think we would end up. And we will be very surprised at how many of us will actually be there. And then I think we're going to be surprised at who is going to be in heaven. I think it's going to be all the poor, oppressed, working class, marginalized people, because I cannot see how poor people go to hell. And I actually don't believe in hell, like a separate thing called hell, like eternal suffering. I don't believe in that. I think hell is on earth. I think there are no demons in hell. I think hell is empty and all the demons are on earth, and they're politicians. They're politicians and rich people. They're politicians, rich people, CEOs, they're lobbyists, they're the lobbying entities, they're the fucking military. I think that's where hell is. I think hell is imperialism. I think hell is capitalism. And the oppression and the degradation that it must create in order to continue to justify itself and keep itself in existence. That's what I think hell is. The suffering created for people under those systems on earth right now. That's what hell is. And the demons are the people who are perpetrating that hell, but the demons are also the people who are supporting it, either through directly voting for these people or by doing what some people are doing now. Yeah, voting for the genocidaire, but making excuses for why that's okay. And those excuses, if you notice, have nothing to do with the people being slaughtered. Because for a lot of Christians and a lot of Black Christians, they see Arabs exactly the same way that white Christians see Arabs, as a bunch of animalistic, warlike, monstrous terrorists who want to kill all Americans because they hate our freedoms. What freedoms? What freedoms? We can't even say everything that we want to say about this ongoing ethnic cleansing genocide since 1899 on YouTube without getting deplatformed or demonetized. What freedom? Students cannot protest in support of their people. Members of the Palestinian Youth Movement, Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voices for Peace, the college chapters, they can't even protest with their comrades and folks in solidarity with them to support their people, to save their lives against genocide without being cracked over the head by the cops, by the FBI, that is not independent, by the Department of Justice, that is not independent, that is by the local police that are trained by the Israeli occupation force. What freedom? What freedom have people in this country ever had to resist this government? What freedom? So no, people around the world don't hate the United States government. And let me be clear, people around the world hate the government and the military of the United States. They don't hate the people, because they understand that we must be deeply indoctrinated or deeply ignorant. because people around the world are like, I don't understand how y'all don't see what your government is doing. How do you not see all this blood running through the streets of our people that your government is financing? How do you not see this? And then when we do delegations to other countries, or we engage in solidarity activities or events with people from other countries, and we talk to people from other countries, and they find out, oh, you're indoctrinated. Oh, they lied to you. They lie to you through everything. They lie to you from the cradle to the grave. They lie to you in school. They lie to you in church. They lie to you at work. They lie to you in your leisure time. They lie to you in the movies and the books and the magazines and the newspapers, on the cable. They lie, they lie, they lie. And that is all they have ever done to you. So, okay, I get that you don't understand what your government, that you didn't understand what your government has been doing to us. But now you know. Now you know. And now what are you going to do about it? And we are at that point. We are at that now you know, now you see it, because the genocide is being live streamed. Now you see what your government does. Now we're at the what are you going to do about it part. And we see what our people are doing about it. They're voting for the genocide to continue. If people vote for Trump, they're voting for the genocide to continue, because he said he would. As a matter of fact, he said, if I'm president again, I will tell Netanyahu to hurry up and finish, not to stop, but hurry up and finish. And we know that Harris has said several times that she will always give Israel the support it needs to defend itself. And Tim Walz has said that the expansion of Israel is critical, key to protecting the interests of the U.S. in the Middle East. So the bombings of Lebanon and now Iran, the U.S. wants Israel to do this. They know they're going to do it. That's why they're giving them the weapon. And the faith community's response is, the person who is the Black woman who is facilitating this is like Esther. She was born for such a time as this. And that is some heretical, that is just some bullshit. That is just absolute bullshit. And it is a gross weaponization of the story of Esther. It is a gross misinterpretation and twisting of what that story means. And it is an insulting application of the story to someone who is doing the exact opposite of what Esther did and is being unapologetic in it and is going so far as to blame Black men, to shame Black men for hating Black women, because Black men are like, what? First of all, what y'all done for me, what y'all done for us, and we remember you, Kamala. We remember you. When the Supreme Court said that California prisons were overcrowded and the nonviolent and people who were convicted of nonviolent offenses needed to be released, what did you do, Kamala? You kept people in prison so you could use their labor, their free labor, to fight wildfires. And then the Supreme Court had to come and make you release them. Black men didn't forget that. Did not forget when we talked about that in 2020, when Harris ran for the Democratic presidential nomination and she did not get one vote, not one, from any of the Democratic delegates because of her garbage record as a cop, locking up Black parents for their kids' truancy. Oh, they make such a big deal. Oh, well, no one really went to jail. Just the fact that she had the idea to lock parents up because their kids miss school instead of maybe finding out why their kids miss so much school, because maybe there are some other issues there that the state can intervene and provide support for the parents and the kids. But no, her first act, her first response to the truancy problem is to lock the parents up. And one woman, one Black mama, did get arrested. She got perp walked in front of the cameras and she was made an example of. And she wrote a book. I think she wrote a book. I have to find it. We need to talk about it. Black men didn't forget that. I think a whole lot of us Black women did, unfortunately. Because a whole lot of Black women, not every Black woman, because I don't want somebody in the comments, well, I'm not talking about you. If it don't apply, let it fly, please. But way too many Black women who are liberals, who are Democrats, who, oh, I'm so scared of the Project 2025, Trump is going to re-implement slavery. People are actually saying that. And I swear to God, the lack of logic that is being thrown around right now. It's wild that people are talking about they have to vote for Harris in order to stop Trump, because Trump is going to he's going to reintroduce slavery. He's going to bring back slavery. But when Barack Obama actually did bring back slavery in Libya, y'all didn't give a shit. Y'all didn't care. Y'all didn't care about those dark-skinned Africans being literally stood on auction blocks in Libya after Obama and Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, had Muammar Gaddafi assassinated in the most brutal way possible. Y'all didn't care about the slavery being brought back then. I don't understand why you how all of a sudden did you become concerned about slavery being reinstituted when it happened? You didn't care. Oh, I know. You don't care if other people are enslaved because of what Democrats and Black politicians do in this country that affects other people and other. If they do stuff that brings slavery back to Black folks, African folks in other countries, you don't care about that. That doesn't matter because it's not you. Because it doesn't impact you. You are not the one being enslaved. You're not the one being dragged to the auction block to be sold. If you keep voting for lesser evil, Trump is not going to re-implement slavery. I'm just like, why do people think that Republicans are omnipotent just about? It's the weirdest thing. Republicans believe that Democrats, or at least they made it seem like Barack Obama was omnipotent and all by himself he was going to destroy the US government, because that's what they said, because he was a black guy and he's like, oh, and they were like, oh my God, we're going to be governed by a Negro and a Muslim and a secret Muslim and yeah, all that kind of, oh yeah, the secret Muslim stuff. Oh yeah. The secret Muslim stuff that was actually started by Hillary Clinton when she circulated that picture of Obama in a traditional, I believe, Kenyan dress. Yeah. Hillary Clinton started that one. Democrats don't like to admit that either. Republicans just picked up on it and ran with it, but Clinton started that. And why did that resonate so much? It wasn't just because of 9/11 and the Islamophobia that emerged, or didn't emerge, but that was solidified, was legitimized after 9/11. It goes right back to, I believe it goes right back to the stereotyping of Arabs in our faith texts. I really do believe that has a lot to do with it. I cannot see the connections between the way Arabs are described, the descendants of these people who we know today to be Arabs. I can't ignore the way they are stereotyped and described as the way people see them today. People really believe Arabs are just naturally terrorists, that they just naturally want to blow shit up, that they just naturally want to run around and kill people, that they hate Americans. Who was it? A couple of days ago, some Republican politician said that Palestinian children are taught from 2 years old to kill Americans. Where did they get this shit from? They get it partially from the Bible. They get it from their faith tradition telling them that the people that God loves are descended from this child of Abraham, Isaac, right? And the people that God, well, he tolerates them because he made them, but they got problems. They're all descended from this other illegitimate child of Abraham, who is Ishmael. Everything about that narrative. Thank you. See, it was Rudy Giuliani who said that Palestinian children are taught at 2 years old to kill America. What the fuck? And people believe it. Nobody should be able to say something that ridiculous about an entire group of people with no proof, no evidence, no basis in fact or truth or anything, and have people believe them unless there's something wrong with everybody else too. And I contend there is something deeply wrong with everybody else in this country, other than us anti-imperialists fighting like hell to stop this genocide. Because everybody else in this country has believed the narrative about the violent terrorist Arabs who are just innately that way because of their nature. Because of their nature as a people. Where does that come from? It comes from the Bible. I can tell you where it doesn't come from. It doesn't come from the Quran. The Quran obviously doesn't speak about Arab people that way, but you know what the Quran also does not do? It doesn't speak about Christians in a disparaging way at all. The Quran actually calls Christians people of the book because of our little Bible, you know. and I guess the Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were like, oh, that's very cute. They have their little holy to that's very cute. Okay, let's not be mean to them because historically they have been good to us. And that has been true. And if you read the Quran, you can actually read the history of conflict in which Christians very often gave shelter to Muslims and Jews. Or Muslims gave shelter to Christians and Jews during the Crusades. So there were several instances in the history of that region in which the European Christians, the Catholics, they're like, we got to kill all the infidels, all of them, everybody who doesn't believe in Catholicism, not just Christianity, but Catholicism. Everybody who does not want to be a Catholic, is not a Catholic, has to die by the sword. You either accept the cross or you die by the sword. And so that was every non-Orthodox Christian. So that was the, and then that was the Muslims, and that was also the Jews. And in several of those instances in Jerusalem in particular, when there was a Muslim leader of Jerusalem and the Catholics, the Crusaders from the Pope came after the Jews, it was the Muslims who gave the Jews and the non-Orthodox Christians protection from the Crusaders. That happened repeatedly. This history is talked about in the Quran. This history and the comradely relationship of not just solidarity, there's that word again, solidarity, but kinship between Islam and Christianity, between Muslims and Christians. It's documented in the Quran. They talk about Jesus being a prophet who is to be highly respected. They talk about his mother, Mary, being highly blessed among all women. These things are in the Quran. They don't call Black people. I'll put it this way. Muslims didn't come up with the curse of Ham. Muslims didn't come up with that. White Christians did. White evangelical Christians came up with the bullshit lie of the curse of Ham. Muslims didn't do that. Arabs didn't do that. And for people who say, well, the first people who enslaved us were Arabs, and Arabs have a lot of anti-Blackness with them. First of all, I'm tired of the term anti-Blackness. I can't take it anymore. That's such a nebulous term. Second, when we understand the history and the process of colonization and occupation, we should understand the role that propaganda plays in carrying that out. People in other countries who have been colonized by Europeans usually have a stereotypically negative view of the same people that European colonists hate. See, it's not anti-Blackness. It's not this innate hatred of Black people that anybody in the world has, except for Europeans. They do. It's true. It's because that's where it came from. Okay. But when people talk about, Arabs are anti-Black, they just don't like, no, it's not. It's not. It is a result of colonization. It is a result of the indoctrination against other people that they are not supposed to be in solidarity with. Why does the propaganda happen? Why does the US government propagandize other people that they colonize and occupy to hate Black people in this country in particular? Why do they do that? Because they hate us that much. They really, and by hate, I mean, they do not want us to be in solidarity with other people because we represent the fulcrum that is the global resistance to global imperialism. Africans. This is why Africa must be united and free in order for the rest of the world to be free. Because it was the carving up of Africa That was almost the beginning of the modern era of imperialism and settler colonialism. So that the carving up of Africa, the underdevelopment of Africa, seeing Africa as a chessboard to be bartered between European powers, claiming parts of the continent for themselves, going in and imposing their ideology, their values, their beliefs, their morals, their worldview, their opinions about other people onto the population they're colonizing. And if they're colonizing more than one group of people, do you think they want those different groups of colonized people to get together and compare notes? No, they do not. This is why they have never wanted us, Africans in this part of the diaspora, to connect with our people in the rest of the diaspora. This is why they have never wanted us to identify as African. Because the day we all understand that we are African, that is the day we understand that our relatives are fighting for their lives against US imperialism and colonialism on the continent right now. And because they are our relatives, it is our responsibility to fight with them and to fight this system inside the beating heart of imperialism. That's our job. That's our responsibility. The minute we connect our identity with Africa, that's when we realize, oh, it is my job to stab this beast in the heart from the inside, so I'm gonna do it. They don't want that. They don't want us doing that. What are there? How many of us are in this joint? 4-something million? Do you think they want millions of us talking about we African? And we are advocating for a one united Africa under scientific socialism? Those are not just empty words and a theoretical statement to make. No, that's a direct threat to the empire. Because one united Africa under scientific socialism means that imperialism is gone from the continent, means that the imperialists are kicked out, means that neocolonialism is dismantled and Africa belongs to the Africans. And that means all Africans, all of us throughout the diaspora. It's our home. So then what do you think happens when we can facilitate, effectuate, bring about, create a one united Africa under scientific socialism because it's our homeland? What do you think happens if we can do that? Most of us would go home. That's what would happen. This country would lose quite a lot. 4 million, not 400 millions. There are 300 something million people in the United States. I think there are 4 million Black people. I think, I think my numbers are correct. But if that's not correct, please correct me. Yeah, that's what would happen. This country would lose a very large segment of its low wage, unskilled, exploited labor. And if we are able, not if, sorry, strike that, when we are able to bring about a one united Africa under scientific socialism, what does that mean for people in the global South, Venezuela, Cuba, in the Americas, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru? What does that mean? Colombia, what does that mean for all those other people? Well, that means imperialism gets run out of their countries too, because once Africa has become free, what do you think the Africans are going to do to all of the people around the world who have always been in solidarity with them? Because this is another thing. This is another thing that we don't understand about the rest of the world and the way the rest of the world understands what the United States is that we don't understand that the rest of the world understands precisely how evil the United States is. They are fighting against US and Western imperialism right now and have been for decades. They've just been waiting on us. So the liberation of Africa is key to the liberation of everyone. And Palestinians have been in solidarity with every African liberation struggle, the South African struggle against apartheid, and the struggle against racist police terrorism in this country. They have been. And Palestinians, in their ability to have survived and resisted their own genocide up to this point, they have given us an incredible inspiration for liberation struggles. That they have literally shown us this is how you can do it when you have nothing, when your enemy takes everything for you. How do you continue to survive? You continue to survive, and you fight with whatever you have at your disposal. You refuse to give up. You refuse to die. You refuse not to have children, right? That's it. And I'm not going to get into it. No, but that is a part of genocide, where they're telling you that we're not giving you prenatal or postnatal care. We're not giving you access to doulas or just plain old regular medical care. No, we're not going to do it. Mm-mm. And we're going to limit the food that you eat. We're going to restrict the amount of calories that you eat every day, so everybody is malnourished. So we know that babies need nourishment to grow inside our bodies. And if we're not getting enough nourishment, what do you think is happening to babies that are inside? They're not. And somehow Palestinian women have resisted that. They have resisted the calorie restrictions and still had babies. The same way enslaved women, let's bring it right back to us. The same way enslaved women took control of their own reproduction and had babies when they weren't supposed to, and chose not to have babies they did not want to have, like the ones that they were forced to have when they were raped by the masters, or when the Black men who were enslaved were forced to rape the women in order to make them pregnant to produce more slaves after the slave trade was made illegal. Because you know what the slave owners did in this country after the slave trade, importing slaves from Africa, importing Africans from Africa to be enslaved. I had to correct myself real quick there. You know what they did after that was deemed illegal? You couldn't import Africans for slavery anymore. They just set up breeding farms. Literal breeding farms, where they would, as soon as the young enslaved girl had her first period, she was raped and impregnated. And that happened repeatedly. There is a cemetery here in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to have Marsha Coleman Adebayo on to talk about Moses Cemetery here in Washington. Well, it's right outside of Washington, D.C. And it is the cemetery of enslaved people. There is the marker of a young girl who suffered that fate. She was raped and forced to have babies who were sold into slavery, who were the next generation of chattel. She died at a very young age, and her body was buried in this cemetery near this church. And a property developer has come up because they want to build something on the land where the cemetery is, where our people's bodies and bones are. They dug those graves up. They literally took a bulldozer and dug the graves up, dug the bones up, the markers, and did not give one damn about that young girl's life, her bones, her story, her importance to us. So they don't give a fuck about us. These kinds of stories about our connection to the way Palestinians struggle and how they have survived their struggle, it's so similar to the way we struggled and how we survived our struggle. It is so similar to the way the indigenous struggled and how they survived the struggle. How are we not connected? How does Palestine not have anything to do with us? When Palestine is literally the live streamed version of every settler colonial project that has ever existed. If you ever wanted to know what settler colonialism looks like, when it's implemented, you're watching it. You're watching it. You're watching what was done to the indigenous when the Europeans came over here and decided this was their land. That's what this is. So even with the misinformation, the lies, the stereotypes, the obvious bias against Arabs that is in the Bible, and when you read it, there is no way, if you are even a marginal student of history, that you would not ask yourself, now, why is this in here? Why is this here? Who put this here? When was this written? What was going on when it was written? Why would they say this about an entire group of people if this is supposed to be the divinely inspired word of God? You mean to tell me God inspired you to say that shit about an entire group of people? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Stop lying on God, whether he exists or not. Don't lie on him. No, that was people. That was people who put that in there for their own political purposes. For their own purposes of using these holy texts, these sacred faith traditions and stories and moral guidances, they put that stuff in there to use this not as a guide for the faithful, for how we live our life, but as a way to control everybody. That's what it's in there for. So we, people of faith, have to be very clear that our Christian faith, it wasn't, I won't say that the faith itself was co-opted by white supremacy and settler colonialism, but the marketing of the faith sure as hell was. And the marketing of the faith, it is the Bible. It is. So when you look at the Bible and you can easily point out the contradictions and the stereotypes and the anti-human hatred of entire groups of people, and the senseless violence. If you want to see violent, Christians are the very people always talking about, oh my God, Islam is such a violent religion. It's so violent. It's the most violent religion on the planet. That's why they want to kill everybody. Have you ever read the book of Joshua? You need to read the book of, you want to see some violence? Read the book of Joshua. That is some amazing violence. And it's all in there. Allegedly to justify this group of people who call themselves the Israelites being allowed to slaughter entire groups of people who were supposedly in their way, according to what God said. Does that sound familiar to you? Sound familiar? Is the same attitude that went into the misinterpretation of these scriptures. Same attitude. So let's see. Let me look at what you have to say here. Amy, hey, thank you. So my last name is Lukman because my late husband's name was Abdushahid Lukman. When Abdus, whose given name was Michael Johnson, I forgot what his given middle name was, but when he took his shahada, the name he was given was Abdushahid Mohammed Lukman. And Lukman, yes, is after Lukman the Wise in the Quran. But I think there is an instance of a derivative of Lukman in the Bible, but I have to look it up and find it. But I thought I saw it in there once. It's not spelled the same, but I think it's a derivative of it. But that's a very interesting question, because now I get to go do some research, and I'm going to find it. But yes, the name Lukman is for Lukman the Wise, and it was the name that was given to my Abdus, who, as most people know, passed away in 2021. So yes, I miss him too. See, I really do. I miss him. I especially miss him now, because I am not doing justice to explaining the difference between how the Quran treats Christians and how the Bible treats Muslims and Arabs. He brilliant on the history, on religious history and the history of religious conflict. He was amazing, absolutely brilliant about it. So he could have done a much better job explaining all of the intricacies and details and the names, which I think is extremely important. The names and the dates and the period of the Crusades, that these interactions with Muslims ruling Palestine and giving Jews and non-Orthodox Christians protection. And when the non-Muslims ruled Palestine, the Muslims and the Jews were exiled. When the Catholics conquered Palestine, and they kicked out they either enslaved, exiled, or killed all the Jews, all the non-Orthodox Christians, all the non-Catholics, and all of the Muslims. So when the Muslims came to power again, after they kicked out the Catholics, then what was the first thing the Muslims did? The Muslims invited the non-Orthodox Christians and the Jews back into Palestine. So where is this idea that Muslims and Arabs have always hated and wanted to kill the Jews? That's not even historically correct. That's not correct. That is not correct in the history of Palestine. That is not correct in the history of the so-called Middle East. That's not correct. If you read the Quran, you will see that's not correct, not even as reflected in the Islamic faith. So why is it reflected in the Christian faith that the Arabs are a bunch of psychopathic, violent, evil people? Because of white supremacy. Because the people who translated the original scrolls into the canon we have now, and even that was a process of eliminating a whole lot of other books from the Bible. So there are books in the Catholic Bible that do not exist in the Protestant Bible, and then there are books in the Ethiopian Bible, in the what is it called? The Orthodox Christian Bible, I believe. That do not exist in the Catholic or the Protestant Bible, because that's probably the most complete Bible that exists, and that's in Ethiopia. So I would love to get a copy of that Bible, because I need to see what's in it, as opposed to what's in this thing we have. Right? Of course there's a difference. And sadly, most Christians in this country do not know this. They don't know any of it. They don't know that the Bible we have, this Protestant Bible, is not a complete representation of thank you, Dre, the Coptic Bible. Thank you. Is not a complete representation of all of the books or accounts that were written about the life of Jesus and his acts and his impact. A lot of folks don't know, a lot of Christians don't know that the Bible was not actually written by God. It was not actually inspired by God for one person. It's not written by one person. The Bible is not written by 5 people. It's not written by 20 people. The Bible is written by God knows how many damn people, hundreds. And some of those people are unidentified. Some of the scrolls that were found from this period in antiquity, some people don't know who wrote some of those things. The Bible, the King James Bible was not written by Shakespeare, but it was greatly in the translation. The way the scrolls were translated were deeply influenced by the way Shakespeare wrote. So the prose he used is basically the prose that is used in the Bible. This is why people hate to read the King James in its original translation, because the prose is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It's early English, Latinish type of, yeah, it's bullshit. It's silly. And a lot of the words are mistranslated, or the words in the original text or the text or the Greek no longer had a meaning in modern at that time that King James had his priests translate the Greek. Some of those words didn't have meanings anymore because these things didn't exist in a more modern society. So they just made shit up. They just filled stuff in. They were like, I don't know what that word means. What is that? I don't know what it is. I don't think people do that anymore. People don't do that anymore. So what do we call it? I don't know. Let's call it something else. Let's just make something up. That happened a lot in the Bible we have now. Happened a lot. So these are things about our Christians, our holy text that we don't admit, that we don't know. And if we know, we don't like to admit it. We still love to believe that the Bible, this Protestant canon that we have, is the divinely inspired, inerrant word of God, and that, you know, everything in it is right and true, or true and right. And, and if you deviate from it, then you'll be cursed. And man, nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. So I, as a follower of Jesus, I read what Jesus said to do. That's what I read. That's what I read. And I take pretty much everything else with kind of a grain of salt. And if it does not pass the all of us are loved by God equally test, then I don't pay any attention to it. I don't. But as we see, this is not how most Christians, particularly Black Christians, approach their faith. You're right, Nay. The Council of Nicaea of 325 needs to be studied, because the way we go, the way we got this canon, the way we got the Bible with the books in it that are in it now in the West, was that these people at the Council of Nicaea were going to kill each other. They were going to go to war over whether God was triune or not, whether God is a three-part entity or not. They were going to go to war about that. This is what the Europeans were doing about God. Instead of just living in peace and treating the stranger among us like our friends and feeding the poor and all the kind, just like God actually does tell us to do in the Old Testament. It's in there. They were like, one of them said, I believe that God is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Another one of them was like, no, then that splits up God, and you cannot split up God. God is God. So there's God, and then there's maybe this other thing, but that thing is not God. And then this other person was like, well, I don't know if either of you are right, but we believe in X, Y, and Z. So they were going to go to war. So they decided, okay, I tell you what, in order to keep us from going to war, let us get together and decide on which of these texts we agree on. And we'll put that in a collection. We'll put the stuff that we agree on in a collection, and we'll go with that. Well, let's not fight over divinity. Well, let's not fight over whether God is triune or not. Let's not do that. Let us agree on what we can agree on. And they went through all of the books that had been translated from original scrolls, and they picked the 33 that are in the Bible now. You do know there are more than 33, right? There are a lot more books that are supposed to be a part of the Bible than the 33 books that we have in this Western Protestant canon. That's how we got the Bible. So for anybody to say, so for anybody to say, well, Nuri, Young, yeah, Europeans is a broad term, but I use it the same way people use Africans. I mean, because look, it's uh, 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 people in Guinea-Bissau are probably different from people in Mali are probably different from people in Senegal, but don't people call everybody from the continent of Africa Africans? So Europeans, French, England, Spain, Portugal, Europe. That's why I say that, because what we're talking about is pan-European hegemony. We're not talking about the control of a specific group of people in Europe. No, we're talking about an agreement among all European nations, all of them and their leaders. They were all involved with the carving up of Africa. It wasn't just France. It wasn't just Britain. It wasn't just Spain. No, it was all of the European countries that went in and carved up an entire continent of people and decided those people and their resources and this continent belongs collectively to us. That was Europe. That wasn't like individual. So look, if that's the hill if that's what you're gonna stay stuck on, cool. I'm moving on. So because we're beyond semantics and these kinds of why? Because the point is, it's colonization. Faith has been colonized. Faith is still being colonized, and it is a pan-European project. It is not just select countries in Europe that are beneficiaries to all this. No, it's Europe. And Europeans now have even shrunk their own designation of who's European and who's not, because they didn't kick the Russians out. They have made the Russians Asian because of Genghis Khan. So yeah, it's Europe. Anytime they can kick folks out of being European, no, it's Europeans. Whoever they decide is Europeans, that's who it is. So we have Nuri, if you're gonna stay on it, stay on it. Cool. We understand that Ireland was colonized by the British. So obviously I'm not talking about Ireland. I love it when people miss a forest and a point for a tree. A tree. So we have a situation here where people of faith, Black Christians in particular, are doing a lot of work in validating and legitimizing a stance on politics that is actually antithetical to the faith we claim we adhere to. This idea of these people praying for Kamala Harris and saying that she is like Esther. That woman ain't like Esther. She is not like Esther. She is not here to stop a genocide. She is not raising her voice to stop a genocide. She is raising her voice to continually tell you she's going to keep these people with whatever supplies they need so they can keep on killing people. She's not Esther. But you have these Christians who don't read their Bible, who are very much invested in the settler colonial project that is the United States of America. These people want to be comfortable here. They want to be comfortable here. They do not give a fuck how many people die because of U.S. foreign policy. They honestly don't. This is why they don't care that brown Palestinian Jesus's people are being slaughtered. They know that Jesus was Palestinian. They know. And they don't care. Because they believe that the people who are being slaughtered are Arabs and they deserve it. Because look at what they did to the Israelites in the Bible. But the thing is, they never talk about the ways in the Bible that the so-called Israelites were allowed to just wreck shop on anybody who just happened to be in their path, won't bothering them. But allegedly, because God told these people to go and slaughter entire groups of people, that is somehow supposed to be okay. That's Joshua, by the way. That basically, in a nutshell, that's Joshua, the book of Joshua. How is that okay? How is it that we Christians can read our holy text allegedly and not deal with these contradictions of who God says he is, no respecter of persons, on the side of the oppressed, freer of the enslaved? Do you understand? A producer of reparations, because you do know that when the Hebrews left Egypt, they did not leave empty-handed. God told the Egyptians that they will give those people what the Egyptians profited from off of their labor. God told the Egyptians, make sure they do not leave empty-handed, and they didn't. How come Christians never bring up that in the Bible when they talk about reparations? How come Christians don't talk about reparations? One of the reasons we are down so bad right now in this election season with a live streamed genocide going on, is because these people in this country who call themselves Christians have convinced themselves that the lies about America being a Christian nation are true, and that America is uniquely blessed by God above every other nation in the world. They believe that is true, so they don't think they have to read their Bible. They do not read their Bible. They do not contend with any of the contradictions in the Bible. They don't understand the impact that these scriptures about the descendants of certain people have on people today, including us. We do not understand the impact that these scriptures have had on us. But I see it now. I see it because I see why it is so easy for these folks to have this silk press slaughterer, this genocidaire, who's from a Black Greek organization, in their church praying for her, talking about she Esther. It fits for them because according to their same faith tradition, according to their holy texts, the people who are being genocided deserve it. And in that way, yeah, Christianity needs to be decolonized. Absolutely does. And all of these Christian leaders, Black and white, but especially the Black ones, they need to be dealt with. They need to be dealt with. Take that however you will. But I can say as a Christian, I'm sick of these people. I despise these people like Jamal Bryant and all of these people who have had this woman in their churches, silencing people who are doing exactly what our faith tells us to do, which is to speak up on behalf of the oppressed, to fight for justice on behalf of the oppressed. You notice Kamala Harris didn't say nothing about those scriptures. Just this general nebulous justice for all people except for the Palestinians, you mean? All people except for the ones that you are slaughtering. Okay. And the reason Christians are able to have her in their church and to pray for her and to bless her and to compare her to Esther and to tell people to vote for her and to shame people bitterly when they tell them, I will not vote for genocide, is because they really believe, because of their faith tradition, that this woman is the lesser evil, and that she's some type of embodiment of a biblical prophecy, exactly like the way the right wing thought or believed or said that Trump was. You notice how those two pictures of the faith leaders praying over Trump and Harris, they look the same. They're the same. They are the same. So that's this week. Got a busy weekend ahead as usual. Did an amazing interview with Solomon Commission, professor at University of Maryland earlier this week, went to the BAP Baltimore and PACA joint shutdown AFRICOM teach-in at the University of Maryland yesterday. We're going to be doing another series at the University of Maryland with teach-ins with the students. Did an interview, well, not an interview, spoke to students at Virginia Tech today via Zoom about anti-Blackness and Palestinian solidarity and the importance of Palestinian and Black solidarity. And tomorrow, it's the Black is Back Coalition 16th annual Black People's March on the White House rally and march. And this weekend is also Students for Justice in Palestine's national conference. Very, very busy time, a lot going on. Now is not the time for us to take our eye off the struggle for liberation. Now is not the time for us to be afraid of people who are gaslighting and bullying us. For those of us who are people of faith, now is not the time to be silent, because that's not what our faith tells us to do. Our faith tells us to speak out on behalf of the oppressed and to fight for justice, for the widow, for the orphan, for the poor. That's our command. That's our Great Commission. If we do that, we actually can effect the kingdom of God on earth. That's the point. The kingdom of God is supposed to be about love, acceptance, peace, and justice for all people. If we do what we are supposed to do, what we are commanded to do in regard to defending the human rights of other human beings, we will have fulfilled our divine commission. That's the divine intervention. It's not some magical, mysterious thing, some supernatural thing. No, it's not supernaturalism. It's not spookism. Divine intervention is us. It's supposed to be us. And it's not enough of us understanding that we are the divine intervention. We were always supposed to be. So that's what I got to say. Black myths. Black myths and Two Black. They're on now. Get off of here. Get over there to Two Black and Black Myths and check that out. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me here on your extended Darker Than Blue here in Lukman Nation. I will upload last week's Darker Than Blue for a special Patreon show, I think. So check that out, because that was really, really dope. It was really, really great. I know you will love it. So I'll drop that on Patreon for you. And yeah, I'll see you all in the streets. Aluta continua. The struggle continues. I know I butchered that one. But Victoria Acerta. Got that right. Victoria is certain if we keep fighting, y'all. Peace, everybody. Love you, C. Love you, Jason, Dre, without Rouse Pasta Sauce, Velveteen 100, Megan, 2 Fs, Cian Chow. Love you all. Vesper X, thank you so much. Nader Nabil, thank you. Appreciate you. I'll see you all later.